Welcome to the Line Movement MMA betting show. I'm Daniel Levy from Best Fight Picks and Half the Battle, joined now by Dan Tom of MMA Junkie and the Protect Your Neck podcast. Today we're going to be talking UFC 256 because Deiveson Figueiredo, the UFC Flyweight Champion, he's making a quick turnaround, and so is his opponent Brandon Moreno. They're both coming off first-round finishes. Now they're going to face each other here in the main event. We're going to get down to that here in a second. First, got to let all our Canadian listeners know to go to blitzbet.eu. Now, Dan Tom, I know you were very excited about the results that happened. Obviously Figueiredo submitted Alex Perez in the first round, then Moreno first round TKO over Brandon Royval. I know there was a bit of an injury there, but bottom line, he got him out of there and won. He got his title shot. Now these two are going to face off. Now, for me personally, I think that this is a way tougher fight for Figueiredo than the Alex Perez fight. I'm curious to see how you feel.
Yeah, I agree. Pick a side. That doesn't mean it's not going to be, a tough fight, or this fighter doesn't present a challenge. Just because you're picking one side doesn't mean you're discounting the other. So I would have to agree with you. Moreno, he's got that durability. He's very proven. He's had multiple stints. We've seen him bounce back from losses. And even though there are still a lot of questions about him as well, there's kind of questions about all the fighters we just kind of mentioned, to be honest. Yeah, I would have to agree with you there, Dan. It's going to be a harder challenge on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very confident in Figueiredo against Perez. I mean, I've seen Perez get submitted a million times, even prior to the UFC. I've seen him get knocked out in the first round in the UFC. With Moreno, you got to go to an exhibition bout to find this guy getting finished. You know what I mean? You got to go to that first fight against Pantoja on the Ultimate Fighter, where, man, he got whooped, he got broken, he got his back taken, he got choked out. But I mean, since that point, he had his first UFC stint, goes back to the regional scene, wins the LFA belt. It looks amazing in that LFA performance, and then comes back and just looks like a new man, and it looks like someone that is a top 5 guy, looks like someone that is a #1 contender. Because I remember that fight against Formiga, and Formiga is usually that measuring stick. Like, if you beat Formiga, you're going to go on to either fight for a title or be a top 5 guy. And it's funny because Formiga is actually the one loss on Deiveson's record. But I mean, I truly believe that, listen, Deiveson, what's his record? 20-1, you know what I mean? Or 21-1 or something like that. You're allowed to have one off night, Deiveson. That was your off night. And even on his one off night where he cuts like 40 pounds, he still doesn't get choked out by a jiu-jitsu ace in Formiga. So I truly think that if Deiveson ran it back with Formiga, that he would whoop him on the rematch, no questions asked. But he didn't want to count it. But hey, he's the champ now. He's defending his belt for the second time in a row. And back to the point I was making, when I saw Brandon Moreno fight Jussier Formiga, I was like, man, this guy looks amazing. Like, to get out of those back takes, like, that's just something that one doesn't simply do. I mean, you remember that Sergio Pettis versus Formiga fight where when he jumped on Sergio's back, I mean, you had to wait until the 5 minutes were over for, them to be separated, right? The bell had to separate them because Sergio couldn't get out. Brandon Moreno was reversing those positions, getting on top of Jussier. So I think he's earned this title shot here against the very violent Deiveson Figueiredo.
Yeah, man. Well, he called for it after he beat Jussier Formiga. Unfortunately, whether it's the brass or casuals, they're not as impressed by decisions as they are by finishes. So it didn't necessarily get him that bump, right? However, it is funny though, because I agree with everything you're saying, but all those things you could also say, about Alex Perez when he suffered his early submission losses. What I would say to defend Moreno, as far as that exhibition loss you talked about, which was, let's not forget, the kid was 22 years old. When these kids are 21 and 22, you can't condemn them for these things. Now, with Perez, to the point of why I agreed with you as to why Moreno presents a tougher challenge, Dan. To your point there, like, yeah, I think Perez, with his shot, the one thing you can take away from it is that he fell into that, and perhaps he can now going forward be known as one of those guys who can fall susceptible to that submission, right? Especially the guillotines. It wasn't the first guillotine loss. Now we know that. Whereas Moreno, he's went away from that trend, like to your point, right, Dan? He's went in there with like killers. He's gone the distance. He's been in bad positions, win or lose. And even when he's lost, he's not getting, blown out of the water from positions. He's not getting, broken or anything like that. Even when he gets rocked, he gets right back on the horse. Like, I love Moreno's confidence. His lead left hand has been really educated. He's been making real quiet improvements. He seemed kind of like a wild, free-forming guy. Perhaps a different type of opportunist than Figueiredo, if you will, both at very high levels here. Don't get me wrong, but both different types of opportunists where I don't believe Moreno is as potent, which is probably why I'm leaning toward the champion in this fight here. But Moreno quietly is building up more of a process than I would argue Figueiredo has. Now, I'm not going to take anything away from Figueiredo's last fight. I just feel like the healthier, especially if you're in our position where we're having to analyze that, or you're trying to put your money, decide where to put your money behind, you want to know more about these fighters. And that was the thing. I was on a panel before that fight, and half of us had Figueiredo, half of us had Perez, right? And I was on the wrong side with Perez, but the part we all agreed on, which was, because, God forbid people can agree on middle ground here, is that we wanted to see more. We wanted to see an awesome fight, selfishly as fight fans, but we wanted to see more Figueiredo. Pantoja, I love that fight. I know you love that fight too, Dan. You've cited it. That's so far the only fight where we've really gotten to see him in the quote-unquote normal, high-pace, question-answering affair. So I'm hoping we actually get that here, and my pick's actually going to pretend toward us getting to see more Figueiredo. Perhaps that's wishful thinking, but I feel like no matter what side we are on, Dan, dude, this fight might not even matter to any of the technical stuff. It might matter just who shows up on the night. These guys are having to peak both twice in 1 month. That is super, super tricky. And anybody that overlooks that or speaks of this fight with some confidence without acknowledging that is just silly.
I mean, it's not Deiveson's fault that the majority of these guys can't get past the first or second round with him. I mean, he's just, they've never seen power like that in that division. He's so well-rounded. I mean, obviously he can knock guys out, but I think his jiu-jitsu is off the charts as well. People just like to brush it off. Oh, it was a guillotine choke. How often are you going to see that? But what about the leg scissors sweep that he got, and then went to the guillotine? So, and even that armbar in that first Joseph Benavidez fight, and then the second time gets him with the rear naked choke. So I think Deiveson Figueiredo has got some serious jiu-jitsu tools in his back pocket, but so does Brandon Moreno. I know you remember his UFC debut against Louis Smolka when he tapped him out with a guillotine as well. But as far as this fight getting extended, I mean, I don't necessarily say that the momentum's going to shift towards Moreno if that does happen. I know that that's the narrative, but I mean, I gotta cite that Pantoja fight because that's the time we have seen him go 3 rounds most recently, and I mean, he landed more strikes in the 3rd round than he did in any other round. So, to me, there's no evidence that he's going to slow down if a fight hits championship rounds. I think that the guy's in amazing shape. It's just he just brings something different to the table. He's not your conventional, and when I say orthodox, I don't mean a righty. I mean actually his moves aren't orthodox. You know what I mean? He's truly unique. So one thing I like about Moreno, he's Mexican. He's truly Mexican. He ain't born in California Mexican. He's born in Tijuana. He's Mexican. You know what I mean? And he comes to fight every single time. I remember cashing like a plus 160 on him against Dustin Ortiz back in the day. So Moreno's got my respect for sure. It's just, right now, it just seems like there's not really anyone that's on Deiveson's level. There's not really anyone that can compete with him. There's not anyone that can take his shots. So I got to go with Deiveson by default. But I definitely don't see this being like a 2-minute finish like the Perez fight. Like I thought deep in my soul, I mean, I've seen Perez get subbed by Jared Papazian and these other guys, and the Joseph Benavidez fight where he got knocked out in the 1st round. So I had no question that Figueiredo was going to finish Perez. But here, Moreno's tougher, man. Moreno's tougher than Perez. Moreno's better than Perez. Moreno's more well-rounded than Perez. And I think he earned his title shot more than Perez. So this is going to be a real fight. But I still got to go with God of War, man. I got to go with Deiveson. I think Saturday night, not only does he finish Brandon Moreno, he breaks the record for most finishes in flyweight history. People talk about Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius had 11 title defenses. Deiveson is on his 2nd title defense. He's about to break that record right now. So I got to go with Deiveson Figueiredo. And not only will he still be champion, you'll have the most finishes in flyweight history too, Dan Tom.
Again, I stated it last time Figueiredo fought, though people forget because all that matters is your pick. I actually like Figueiredo more than Perez. I don't have any close bias toward Perez. But, man, as you're speaking, I feel bad for Perez, man. He is getting annihilated in the analysis here, being used as the whipping boy for analysis work, his heritage and everything. Those are some shots, my friend. But regardless, I appreciate the real Mexican warriors, too. So I get what you're saying as far as the positive ends of that. But again, I just warn y'all, I don't want to get hung up on it because again, if you're listening to what I was saying, Dan, I was actually agreeing with you, but the way you started that off, I don't want people to be framed again, back to that message that I said the first time Figueiredo fought, and we broke him down. I'm a fan of this guy. I never blamed him. I'm just stating 1 + 1 is 2, Dan. I'm stating that the sky is blue, that we've only seen outside of that Pantoja fight. And I was giving you credit for. I wasn't even coming at you. In fact, I was giving you credit for properly citing it. I, too, share my favorite sample size being that Pantoja fight. So even if we're straight on that page, I just want to make sure that the audience gets it straight. Because, again, man, I'm not worried about the weight. I wasn't worried about the weight last time. Although I'm wrong, I'm always the first to admit. You never have a problem to get me to admit when I'm wrong. I did say Figueiredo capitalizes on chaos, and that is exactly what he did. No more, no less. I see people breaking out the guillotine like it was some Zapruder footage. And you want to talk about the leg scissor sweep. I'm a guy who's a fan of leg locks. Find me a bigger leg lock defender from a technical side or a fan perspective. It's me. But let's not deny, again, back to 1 + 1 = 2, that the leg lock is low percentage moves. And that low percentage move after grabbing the fence twice, which I don't really care. I think Figueiredo would have won anyways, which is why this is probably the second time you've ever heard it come out of my mouth. He grabs the fence twice, goes for a low percentage leg lock that he misses, gets hammer fisted cleanly at least twice, assumes bottom position, gets past. Now, from there, he's able to score the guillotine, but to pretend that it's anything more to anything less, let's call it for what it is. It was a good win, but I want to see more from Figueiredo. That's all I'm trying to say here, folks. In fact, not only am I not disrespecting or blaming him or saying that he is going to gas in championship rounds, I've not said any of that, folks. My official pick, which you'll see coming on MMAJunkie.com, of course, you're going to get it here first on this show, is that I'm picking not only Figueiredo, but I'm picking Figueiredo by decision. Even with the turnaround, I don't think that his weight's going to be an issue. I didn't think it was going to be an issue last time. Even though I picked Figueiredo, folks, it wasn't for the classic things that you hear Dan speaking of a lot of people disrespecting the guy for. That wasn't coming from me, folks. You know what I'm saying? I said either Figueiredo is going to snatch him up with something early, or Perez's process is going to be able to take him down and outwork him. And we saw a little bit of a glimpse until Perez kind of, to our original point, showed his true colors, got caught in that guillotine like for the umpteenth time, like Dan said, right? I don't think Moreno's that guy back onto this matchup. I just want people to be careful about overvaluing this thing. Like I said, it's not the weight that worries me for the turnaround as far as Figueiredo getting cleared. It's everybody jerking this guy off, man. Like, I think his cock's going to be too red and NAC is going to pull him from the fight. Like, this guy's getting handy. He's like, hey, dude, give him credit like how Dan does. I like what Dan says as far as this guy saving the flyweight division. Fucking, you want to talk about him being a gangster? Talk about him going into Dana White's office, getting $50,000 that he deserves. What other fighter, all the fighters deserve that, but what other fighters can pull that off? Like, give that dude his credit in these much more important ways. But let's relax. It was a guillotine.
I mean, the guy barely speaks 2 words of English, and he's such a badass that, like, we're already thanking him for saving the flyweight division. We had a champion who spoke perfect English, had the most title defenses in the history of the sport, and they were talking about closing down the division. So I think we do have to thank Deiveson Figueiredo for his contribution, and Henry Cejudo too, when he knocked out TJ Dillashaw and when he dethroned Demetrius Johnson. So thank you very much to both those guys. But look, I kind of hope it goes your way, where you're saying that he wins a decision. I kind of hope he does, and that he can break the record for most finishes in flyweight history his next fight. But I kind of hope it does go to decision, just so he can like shut some people up, because I think that he is the real deal, and I think it's not his fault that people can't get past the first or second round with him. I mean, like, sorry, he's that damn good, So yeah, I hope you're right. But bottom line, we both got Deiveson to be and still, but I think Moreno's going to have his moments, man. I think that he earned his title shot. I don't think he's being rushed in like Perez was. I think Moreno really earned it. I mean, you've seen these performances. The Askarov fight, which I thought was a clear win for Moreno. The Kai Kara-France fight, he destroyed him. And then, obviously, most recently, the Formiga and the Brandon Royval fights. I mean, this guy's paid his dues. He's ready for his title shot. He's earned it. So I think he's a legitimate contender. I just still got to roll with the champ.
Yeah, man. And again, I'm not just saying to be contrarian that it's going to go decision. I truly think that there's plenty of intangibles for the fight to get weird or to be dominant. I just think that, especially under the scoring system of scoring more for damage, coupled with Moreno's Mexican durability, I feel like those are going to be damaging moments, and it's going to be like a Yoel Romero fight where Romero actually gets the decision. At least an earlier Romero fight, not the ones where he doesn't throw anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about like
I
that
know.
Whitaker era.
Yeah.
So
where we thought he should have won both Whitaker fights, or the second one at least.
Yeah, the second one especially, those scorecards were off. But just to say that, I will be looking at the over, and we'll be writing about that in the betting article. Over 2.5, you get a nice plus number if you do think that the durability holds.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the big question for me. I do know some sharps that are taking the shot on Moreno, and I understand where they're coming from. Again, definitely earned his shot. He's definitely the number one contender, so there's no questions asked as far as that's concerned. I could sit here again, say all the stuff I said about Perez, who I respect a lot. I think Perez is really damn good. It's just, everything I listed was all factual. And it's also factual that Joseph Benavidez is 1 or 2 fights away from retirement, whereas Moreno is flat out in his prime. He really earned that opportunity. So I'm excited to see this fight, Dan Tom.
Yeah, man, it's going to be an exciting one for sure. I'm just curious to see if Figueiredo can get off his counters or Moreno can really push that pace. We'll see.
Now, the co-main event of the evening in the lightweight division, we got a showdown between Tony El Cucuy Ferguson and Charles do Bronx Oliveira. And this fight's going to be insane, Dan Tom. I mean, obviously, Tony Ferguson, he had the first double-digit win streak in lightweight history. I mean, I wish we could refer to him as a former champion, former interim champion, but I think that a lot of us felt like, he should have been a former champion at one point. It's not his fault that, certain fights fell off, and now he's almost 40 years old, so it just was kind of unfortunate. But at least he can always go home, and there will be a UFC belt sitting on that mantle, whether it's interim or not. There's still a belt that says UFC champion on it with his name on it, so at least he's got that to go home to. Oliveira, he's always had the talent. He's always been a submission master. I mean, you remember his UFC debut against Darren Elkins. He gets picked up and slammed immediately to the triangle armbar. The guy, he's really a phenom. It's always just been about, what's upstairs. It's always been the mental side of things with a guy like Oliveira. Sometimes he can kind of run you through the series, switch to Doris, to guillotine, to anaconda, take your back. And if you can kind of survive all that, then, he's kind of shocked that you survived all that. And then he kind of covers up and, lets you tee off on him. But it's been a while since that's happened. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, you can list that all the opponents on this current streak, minus Kevin Lee, are not top 10 guys. So you could also argue that he would have beat any of these guys at any point in his career. But on the other side, to give him more credit, I mean, what about his physical maturation? I mean, the guy looks like he's growing into his frame. He's really filling out at 155 pounds. He's overcoming adversity in these fights, which is what I want to see. You remember the David Tamor fight, he got dropped, he gets back up. Even in the Kevin Lee fight, he hit a lot of big shots and kept going and, ran him through the submission series early and didn't give in when he didn't get that early finish. You know what I mean? Eventually got it in the third round. So I think he's been maturing, man. I think this is the best version of Charles do Bronx. It's just a matter of, is the best version of Charles do Bronx enough to go out here and beat a legitimate top 3 guy in the division?
Yeah, man, I like that you bring that maturity because that's something that, regardless of how you're breaking down this fight, you got to account for. This guy's had multiple different renaissances, and let's page note that word renaissance. I think it's an important one, He obviously, even though Tony Ferguson's 36 and he's the advanced guy, and that's kind of the narrative for Tony, which I'm sure we'll talk about. You got the Bronx, who's been a part of the UFC roster for longer, over a decade, right? That being said, he's younger, he's fresher, he's closer to his prime. I think, it's hard to say those things are facts because they're ultimately speculation, but I feel like most people would feel that's very fair, right? And it'd be hard to people to argue at least that characterization of it. And then you look within the last decade, toward the end of 2014, after 3 fights after he gets out wrestled by Frankie Edgar at UFC 162, I believe it was, or 67. He out wrestles guys like, Jeremy Stevens, who's got some decent counter wrestling and is a force at 145, especially then, right? And just kind of has his way with him. And we see him kind of almost doing that Damian Maia mold where he's like, I'm not going to rely on playing off my back or things anymore. I'm going to meld my jiu-jitsu with wrestling. And we've seen this underrated wrestler now in the last half of the decade, the last stretch of the decade, the last 3 years or so, You see him now finally adding more straight shots and jabs. I remember when I called in to break him down kind of to MMA Junkie Radio back in the day when he fought Efrain Escudero back in UFC 22 fight night. Paul Jarez, Marquardt. And I said, if this guy gets a jab, he's going to be dangerous, man. He has the leg kicks. He obviously is the jiu-jitsu to outdo the wrestler, right? Escudero was still a tough winner, was still held relatively high at that point. Folks, this was 10 years ago. And you're like, this guy could do damage. Now we're seeing him add the straight shots and subsequently his uppercuts and his knees and his anti-wrestling tools. That's kind of always been there. Now they're coming to life more, right? So it's great to see, and perhaps he's filling into that frame, which maybe he should have already been at. He was late to come around. He kept asking for 145 about halfway through the 7-fight run. But, you know, I don't think this is why Tony Ferguson tweeted what he did. That's getting people in an uproar, like a fighter saying something stupid is something new, or a fighter trying to get into a fighter's head is something new. Or Tony Ferguson commenting on fighters' weight and tormenting them for it with stupid humor is something new. Yes, folks, those things happen all the time. Newsflash. But the point is, if you look at Oliveira's Instagram, though, like not only in his fights, but even in his Instagram, like I'm not talking about eating too much McDonald's big. I'm talking about he's looking healthy, like as you would say, he's got his doctors in order, as do. And I'm not trying to throw shady speculation, people. If we're speaking to serious bettors on this show, Dan, I know you speak to serious bettors on Half the Battle all the time. And you got to be real about these things, right? And the fact is, there's a reason why USADA is only catching weed and metabolite people right now. And guys are looking back to their inflated ever, right? So he's looking healthy. I don't think he's going to be a problem making weight. But to that point, yeah, man, to Tony's point, to Dan's point, and the different ways they make it, I mean, this guy's looking healthy coming in here. So the line being tight as it is, you can argue it should be wider, Dan. I agree with it being tighter. I think Charles Oliveira deserves some respect in the spot.
Yeah, he definitely does. That being said, I'm not sure if I want to call it a dog or pass situation, because I do think that Tony Ferguson might be a level above Charles Oliveira. It's just about, you know, when do you start to see that decline for a guy like Tony Ferguson? And one could argue that we already have. You know, one could argue that after he had that knee surgery, you remember when he like tripped over the wire and all that shit went down, then he comes back against Cowboy Cerrone. One could make the argument that that was the fight where we started to see a little bit of a decline. If you actually go back and you watch that fight, even the Gaethje fight, the movement isn't as fluid as it once was back in the day. But the thing that makes Tony Ferguson so great is his relentless pressure. The guy's always going forward. He's got that indomitable spirit. He's got that will to win. And also, technically speaking, obviously, you know, his boxing is on point. I mean, you've seen him in there with that speed bag. Not only will he do it with his hands, he'll do it with his elbows too. You know what I mean? And it'll sound like a drum roll, like, you know, from the captain of the marching band. You know what I'm saying? So the guy is serious. And then obviously, you know about Snapdown City. You know about the Darces, the Anacondas. He can run you through the series as well. And he's got the USA wrestling background too. So I think Tony should be favored here. It's just about how much should he be favored, you know? And also, is there a chance that DuBronx is catching him at the right time? So this is one of those fights I'm really not that confident on. You know, I'd rather just sit back and enjoy it. I mean, you guys know when I'm confident. Like last week on Jamal Hill, that's like one of my most confident picks of the year. Y'all heard how confident I was on that pick. And I'll admit, like, you know, I can admit how confident I was there. Here, I don't really know. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not going to bullshit y'all and act like I know who the fuck's going to win this fight. I could see it go either way, but I'm going to lean Tony Ferguson, man. I think he's the favorite for a reason. I think that despite Charles making an evolution and not just his game, but also, you know, his physical maturation, I still think that he's been fighting some soft competition. I think that, you know, let's run through the list real quick, man. When you're talking about, this is his win streak right now, and not to discredit it at all, because look how he handled these guys, but like, right now, we're talking about top 3 in the division with Tony Ferguson. So, I mean, the win streak is Clay Guida, Christos Giagos, Jim Miller, David Tamor, Nick Lentz, who he already beat twice prior, and Jared Gordon. None of these guys are top 30 guys, you know, and then he beat Kevin Lee. He's the only top 15 guy on the list. And we also know that Kevin Lee is in a very dark moment in his career. Just go look at his new tattoo. So, I got to go with Tony Elkakoy, man. Until I really see him fall off that cliff, I'm not going to quite pick against him, you know, against a non-top 5 guy. But look, there's a chance I'm wrong. There's a chance that Charles is really a top 5 guy. That's what he's morphed into. That's what he's been evolving into. So maybe Charles is ready. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the output and the pressure of Ferguson.
Yeah, man. I don't think it's a dog or pass. I just feel like Oliveira deserves respect in this spot. Of course, I'm going to go with my guy Ferguson. Very few people have defended him as hard as I have in this space. I do think there's some good points to deterioration. I looked at his IG, and it's hard to tell because a lot of the stuff is reposts from earlier days, right? But when you look at him when he's bald Tony now, is he moving? Is he changing his levels as well? If he can't get a good shot and guys do get on his hips, his plan B is to hit the Granby. That's why I liked him against Khabib. But can he hit those Granbys that he was hitting in midair against Josh Thompson? That fight was, 5 years ago now plus, right? So you wonder about these things.
Actually,
yeah. No, that was maybe the second.
One of the first.
One of the first Reebok shows and during that first summer for sure.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder these things. I do believe that Oliveira is closer to his prime, like I said, than Ferguson. However, I'm judging this fight at its core. So the reason why I won't say it's a dog or pass, even though I'm not telling you to run out and put your bank account on Tony, even though it is playable chalk technically, at least for the number. It could be one of those fights in hindsight where you're going to wish that you played it. I'm going to be writing about one of my more favorite angles, which I think is the under 2.5 here. Because not only for coverage, obviously, of both parties, I just feel like if we're picking this fight at their core, I think these guys are still the same at their core. Oliveira, as good as he's looking, the best win that he has, which is Kevin Lee, you cited that earlier, the most relevant win too, obviously, right? You look at that, and he's still tiring come that second round. And in fact, you go look at all his fights, he's got plenty of second round finishes. Don't judge it off that. Citing Ed Gallo here, shouts to him. Oliveira is a momentum fighter. Tony is a presenter. He plays for the long game. Oliveira is a momentum fighter. Okay, so he's going to be very dangerous early. But even in fights where he's holding the momentum and he ends up winning in the second, or he even ends up winning in the third, like that Kevin Lee again, the relevant reference here, you see him tiring time after time in the second. And against a fighter who consistently picks up the pack, the proverbial pack, picks up his pace in that second frame like Tony does, even the worst Tony Ferguson we've ever seen against the best Justin Gaethje we've ever seen, Tony Ferguson still had his best work, not just the uppercut. He still did his best work in that second round. So that example I just said, it still holds true to the most relevant and worst version of Tony Ferguson. And even with that uppercut, that worst version of Tony Ferguson almost finished the best version of Justin Gaethje, regardless. If that uppercut happens maybe 15 or 20, 30 seconds earlier, maybe he finishes him and gets him out of there. And that's a scary thought, right?
That's true. Or if that uppercut happens on Charles Oliveira.
Yes, that uppercut could happen on Charles Oliveira. People forget that Tony has heavy knockout power. And if, the wrestling, like is one of my canary in the coal mines for analysis and betting folks, look at it. Guys who fall in love with their hands, guys who get old, guys who effectively wrestle a lot to a little. All of the common threads is when they get older, they wrestle less. And my theory is knees, back to what Dan pointed out, back, shoulders. There's a lot of these reasons that guys start falling in love more with their strikes. And Tony, from welterweight Tony to lightweight Tony, right? He was a knockout artist. He's always had those from the beginning. And those are the skills that go last on paper, right? So I like that Dan mentions that there. Regardless of how he gets it done, I do think he gets it done under toward the end of the second round or the very beginning of the third with the pace this fight's going to be on. But if Oliveira, gets him early, like, am I going to be like the biggest surprise in the world? Like, no, I'll be sad because I like Tony. I like Chucky Olives too, by the way. I just feel bad for Tony because of his poetic fall and rise. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either way here.
I mean, I guess I would be surprised if Tony got caught in a sub, like, without getting rocked first. You know what I mean? Like, if he got dropped and sub, that'd be one thing. But like, if Charles just comes out, takes him down, takes his back and chokes him out, that'll really shock me. Like
Condit and Maya, it would just make depressing. Like, oh, exactly. Not that Maya couldn't have won, but you're like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, exactly. If it's like one of those, like, that'll just be really sad. You know what I mean? Because that was very depressing. Because that was actually that fight happened in 2016, and prior to that, the last time Condit got subbed was in 2006 versus Pat Healy. You know what I'm saying, man? So
very similar fighters too, very similar archetypes there, by the way, Tony and Condit.
Right. So it's just you never know when they're gonna fall off that cliff. I mean, he's coming off the title fight loss, and like, what's the motivation to pick yourself back up and do this shit again? Like, you don't need this, man. You got money in the bank. You got a UFC belt at home. Like, whereas Charles do Bronx is 30, 31. He's still young. You know what I mean? Not to call guys in their early 30s kids, but like compared to Tony Ferguson, he's just a kid, you know? So, yeah, he definitely has more upside at this point. It's just, is he truly who we think he is? That's what I want to find out right now, man, because I want to know, are you a top 3 guy or not? Like, so let's find out Saturday night live at the UFC Apex, UFC 256 pay-per-view. Order it now, and let's see if Charles do Bronx is a top 3 guy or not.
Let's see, baby.
So featured bout in the lightweight division, we got Renato Moicano Carneiro, and he's taking on Rafael Fiziev. And this should be one hell of a matchup. One thing I wanted to point out was the experience difference between these two. You're looking at Fiziev. This is his 10th pro fight. He's currently 8-1, whereas you look at a guy like Renato Moicano, and you know, he's 14-3-1. You know, so 18 fights versus 9 fights. Now, that being said, we got to bring up the striking of Fiziev, man. I don't quite remember what the credentials are, but I just know when I watch him in MMA, I know that this guy's got a striking background. He can strike for real, Dan Tom. He's got a legitimate kickboxing background. I'm not gonna sit here and say he's a glory striker or this and that, because you know that term gets thrown around a lot. But Fiziev knows what he's doing, and he's the kind of guy, like, you throw head kicks at him, he will go into the matrix with that head movement. I know Dan Tom knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for your opinion on this fight, especially on the Moicano side. But yeah, as far as Fiziev goes, he is super technical. He goes to the body, Muay Thai guy. He's everything I like, but almost to a dangerous extent, to where he's got some of the, again, I'm going to cite another phrase from Half the Battle over there. The Russian coast is a phrase you guys coined. Is that not, Dan? But and you could argue that he's got, even in dominant wins, he's got a little bit of that, which perhaps I don't want to deflate the intro on him, because I'm just as excited. And even though this is a fight where I'm going to reserve my right to change, I am leaning toward the Fiziev side. So don't get it twisted. I appreciate the guy, but there is some of that coast in there that worries me. But he does train at Tiger Muay Thai, where, you know, there's a lot of good wrestlers. Of course, the camp is run by American wrestlers. A lot of fun training gifts of Fiziev, whether he's training with Peter Yan or just, you know, wrestling about. He's certainly got some moves, but this is the last guy, even if he's being offensive in quote unquote dominant positions. I feel like any Fiziev supporter is going to be sweating anytime these two grapple, man.
Yeah, look, this is one where I'm either going to be really right or I'm going to be really wrong. And I respect Rafael Fiziev. Obviously, I already mentioned his striking is legit as hell, and he's probably a lot better than his 8-1 record indicates. And someone might say 8-1 is a fantastic record. Like, what do you mean when you say that? And anybody that knows me knows that, like, if you're undefeated or you've had less than 10 pro fights, like, that to me is actually like a red flag. You know, like, to a lot of people, it's like, oh, he's the undefeated guy. He's only had 1 loss. Like, that's like, you know, something that people use to build people up. Like, to me, it's like, shit, that just means he ain't fought the right people yet, you know? So, and that's the case here. You know, this is his first step up in competition. Welcome to the top 20, Rafael Fiziev. This is no longer Alex White. This is no longer Mark Chikasi. This is no longer Magomed Mustafayev. This is no longer all the guys that you padded your record with in your lead up to your UFC debut. Now we're going to see if he's the real deal or not, because Moicano, you know, we'll talk about his losses in a sec, who are all to top 5 guys at the time. But Moicano is a legit guy. Moicano is a top 20 guy, Dan Tom. Moicano beat Calvin Kattar and did not have to shoot a single takedown in that fight. You have to be a certain level to get past a guy like Renato Moicano. Not just any random guy is going to come out here and beat him. So that being said, as far as Renato Moicano's losses, here's where I'm like rolling the dice. Is it a chin issue, or was it him cutting too much weight? Because, like, he looks like a completely different guy at 155 pounds. And I'm not just even talking about that Damir Hadzovic fight, which, like, he would have beat him even in his most dehydrated state. I just mean more so, like, if you watch his interviews this week, just like you see his face filled out. Like, you see that he's fully fed, he's fully hydrated. Whereas you watch any of his interviews when he was cutting to 45, and, you know, that cheekbone that Dan Tom always likes to talk about, you know, the cheeks were You know what I'm saying? He had that fish stuff going on, and it was like uncomfortable. It's like you want the guy to like get some ice cubes. You know what I'm saying? I know Dan Tom knows exactly what I'm talking about. So it's one of those things where I am buying into this narrative that he's a new man at 155, and I felt like he had a good run at 45. It's just he went until the wheels fell off. You know what I mean with the weight cuts. I mean, look, he beat Calvin Kattar. He decisively beat Calvin Kattar. Man, he beat him standing. He destroyed Cub Swanson, drops him with a jab, chokes him out right away. And I know the Jose Aldo fight, I know he had a poster up of Jose Aldo in his room that he used to look up to. So, he was asking for autographs in the middle of that fight, and then he turns around right away and takes the Korean Zombie fight. And I heard an interview with him, and he was so introspective about the losses. He was talking about how, like, after the Aldo fight, he just made an excuse like with the weight cut, and he didn't really take the time to process the loss. So he just jumps into another fight with Korean Zombie right away. And he was like, man, that was my mistake. I should have been more honest about what really happened in that Jose Aldo fight. And actually, it wasn't the weight cut he blamed. He blamed the ref for a quote-unquote early stoppage. But he corrected himself and was like, actually, that shit was not an early stoppage. I was out. So, like, he seems like he's honest with himself. He seems like he's in a good place. I just think he's got too much experience for Rafael Fiziev. And I think that he's going to take shots better at 155 pounds. Look, I think on the feet, you gotta watch out. Fiziev's got very hard kicks. I mean, you hear the sound of those body kicks he was throwing against DeCasey. And it's like my boy Marcelo Ozuna, hitting a grand slam for the Braves. So it's serious, but Moicano is much taller. Moicano is upwards of 6'1". I know they got him listed like 5'10", 5'11", but people I know that have trained with him are like, dude, this guy's a 6'1" featherweight, So he is very, very tall, also at lightweight. Now he's filled out. And I feel like he's entering his prime right now. We just didn't get to see the best performances. He was cutting too much weight. So I'm going to blame it on the weight cut. I'm going to say he comes out here. He can hang with Fiziev on the feet. But when he gets it to the mat, that's when he's going to be in his world. So I got to go with the experience vet. You're giving me plus 145 or so on this. Yeah, I got a Renato Moicano Carnero here, man, for the upset.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I feel like that's where the line should be. That's the thing here. Like I maybe initially leaned toward Fiziev without looking at the tape, just off memory here. But then you look at Moicano and what he's kind of proven, and you look at where the line that is, it's making me shift more toward the Moicano side, especially because if he's able to get it to the ground, it's just like that was the reason why he had a lot of hype coming into the UFC. And that was almost kind of the frustration, at least for not people like yourself, Dan, who was on the right side of like the Jeremy Stevens fight where I was on the wrong side of right. But it was frustrating because we saw more of this point fighting style from him. And we're like, you're known for, and I know he has some Muay Thai stuff too. And he taught that at the gym he used to train at, he was like their Muay Thai teacher or whatever, for the MMA gym. Like, not that he's not good or doesn't have a background there. Obviously he's good. He outstruck Kattar, like Dan said. I was at that fight live. But it's like we want to see more of that jiu-jitsu. And there are also are guys, whether it's stylistic bias or you just miss it for whatever reason, you just don't see it. I don't know what it is, Dan. Moicano is one of those guys for me. He just doesn't impress me. Like the leg kicking performance from Kattar impresses me. His ground game impresses me. But the rest hasn't so much. And the fact that judges we're seeing, they're going away from point fighters now, where guys who do damage, more opportunistic guys, are the ones that are winning rounds and stealing rounds. It makes me want to even further myself from Moicano. Now couple that he's going up to lightweight, which is strange because I could see why people say he's got a bad chin. I'm not jumping on that. It's never a reason why I pick against him, though I did pick both Zombie and Aldo to TKO him. It wasn't because of his chin, though. It was because just it's very written combinations, and Aldo and Zombie work really well off a jab and know what to do off of jabs, and so does Fiziev. So that's going to be something to watch for. But the thing that gets me is that, like, I don't know if it's going to solve him going to 55. Like, I agree that he looks healthier because I interviewed this guy in person, Dan, and Moicano is bigger than I realized. I mean, this guy is huge. Okay. So he is big, and these could help him in these other areas, but I don't like his move to lightweight, man. He doesn't seem to have the more, against more athletic and harder hitters, seem to be the ultimate difference, even against older athletic and harder hitters like Zombie and Aldo at 45. Now you're going to move up to this era where it's like giant, explosive, ultra competitive, and what's always been an ultra competitive lightweight Shark Tank without that physicality and athleticism. And that's the thing. You can be big, but are you athletic? Are you explosive? You can be big, but are you physical, right? Like Oliveira and Tony are both skinny guys, but look at them when they come to wrestlers with higher accolades, with bigger muscle masses and bigger frames. Tony and Oliveira are just having their way with them. So it's not always about size, in other words. So just because Moicano is big, he doesn't have the physicality I like there. That being said, if Fiziev doesn't get him out of there and just coasts or gets taken down early, could I see him getting submitted like that? Totally, man. Totally. So regardless of which side I end up picking here, I think the value is on your side, Dan. So I don't think you're going to look stupid. Even if he loses, I feel like, and I never like to say this after the fact. I know you're not that type of guy either, Dan. So I don't use this. I use this very lightly, but it's one of those spots where I honestly feel like even if Moicano goes out and loses, where you can't give anybody shit who played that dog money if you're going to give him the more experienced and more diverse proven guy for dog money, right?
I mean, listen, people can give me shit for whatever they want. It's a free country, but like, I do think that he's going to look better at lightweight. I feel your points, and I think, you know, in a general basis, you are correct. But I mean, like, Fiziev's a guy that we could possibly see at featherweight. Fiziev's like 5'6", you know, he's not necessarily, you know, one of these like Jalen Turner guys who's like 6'3" at 155. You know what I mean? So I think that Fiziev could actually drop. And I do think that we're going to start to see Moicano, you know, put on some size and kind of adapt into the 55-pound division, kind of like we saw with Poirier. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing the two fighters at all. It's just that I don't know if you remember towards the end of Dustin's run at featherweight, like, he was always a top 5 guy, but, you know, certain shots, like you'd see a fight with him and Akira Corassani, and It was like, well, why was that fight? You know, you're a minus 800 favorite. Why was that fight tougher than it needed to be? You know, and then you see him go up to 55. He takes the shots way, way better, and it almost looks like a new man. I think there's a chance Renato Moicano looks like a new man here. We didn't get a chance to see it last fight because he tapped the guy out so damn quick, which, by the way, like, I know Hadzovic is, you know, not a top 15 guy. He's a top 50 guy, 5-0. I don't think anyone else has finished that guy in like under a minute before. So, I mean, you got to give Renato some credit for that. But I think that if he loses this fight, it won't be a weight cut thing. It won't be a size thing. It'll be because Fiziev was simply the better man on the night. So, yeah, but I'm going to lean with the dog. Let's see what happens. So, Dan, Tom, in the middleweight division, we got Kevin Holland taking on Ronaldo Jacare Souza. And just real quick, gotta mention that Kevin Holland has 13 years of age on Jacare, in terms of he's 13 years younger. And he's got a 9-inch reach advantage over the legendary Jacare as well. That being said, if Jacare gets one takedown, will the fight be over shortly after?
It could very well be, especially the pressure play, man. You look at like the style of smothering grappling, you know, that could be perhaps a problem for a guy like Kevin Holland. I mean, heck, even though I forgive him for a short notice loss, it looks better in hindsight to Thiago Santos. Even he was able to control and, you know, stay out of submissions from the guard. So at the very least, I'm not sure if, you know, even if Jacare doesn't get the submission, you know, I could totally see that as being a round loss for Kevin Holland if he can't get off of his back. You know, especially with a guy like, you know, Jacare, who's going to make you pay for getting off his back. If he didn't feel bold enough to do it, kick off the hips and try to scramble and turtle out against a guy like Thiago Santos, I don't know if he's going to be so quick to do it like a guy like Jacare, who's going to be all over him from Jump Street. That being said, what Jacare are we getting? You know, we haven't seen him since November of last year against Jan Blachowicz when he went at the light heavyweight, which I think we all saw was a dumb and probably was going to be a very short-lived idea. Sure enough, it was, right? So he's back in the right weight class. You know, he doesn't look ultra impressive, but it looks like he's been working out consistently throughout this pandemic. He's got his gym garage, and so he's got a bit of that garage juju going on. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was the fact that I got drawn to Jacare on this one because of the early line. Of course, Kevin Holland was open at a minus 175 favorite. As of this time, I don't know if it's shifted, but it was pretty much even all day as of today, the day of this recording. But seeing that big plus number next to Souza was just interesting because he is the more proven guy. However, he is also having to shift more a bit on a styles fight. He was going to fight Marvin Vettori, who was a southpaw, right? And even though you could argue that Vettori, who was favored to beat Hermansson, would have won that fight anyways, the fact was Vettori had a much easier shift. He was just shifting to another orthodox striker who was a strong grappler. And that's exactly what Kevin Holland's having to do here. Kevin Holland, for as lackadaisical as his attitude is, you can't really blame him because it's kind of a similar opponent with a similar objective. As he told Submission Radio, he's going in there to snipe. However, you can even hear through himself, he's rolling the dice attitude if it hits the ground, which, doesn't inspire a lot of confidence. But I like Kevin Holland. He is a man on fire, as my man Dr. Hal Psych on Twitter like to say. But right now, even though there's another one where I'm kind of reserving my right to pick, I did submit a pick for my staff picks, and it did say Jacare Souza.
Real quick, trivia time. Who has more UFC wins, Ronaldo Jacare or Kevin Holland? Off the top of your head. Don't even think. Don't overthink it. Okay, you got it right. It was a trick question because I know when I ask a question like that, and you're like, "Well, I mean, Jacare has been fighting in the UFC way longer, but Kevin's been active, so maybe Kevin has more." Nah, Jacare has more. He's got 2 more wins than Kevin Holland. So good shit, Dan Tom. Man, this one's tough because I feel like if I'm guaranteed the best Jacare is finishing this fight in the first round with a submission. It's just we haven't seen the best Jacare in a long ass time, and obviously that name it's Jacare. He's a legend. He can be 50 years old. We're still gonna be like it's Jacare. He just has to get into the mat. It's just he's shot. He's landed like 1 takedown in his last 5 fights, right? So it's like one of those things where, and it was that fight against Kelvin, takes him down that first round. Kelvin survives. It's in Brazil. Kelvin takes over the next 2 rounds and wins. So, and Jacare is. It's not really his cardio. It's more like his endurance at this age. Like, can he still push like he once was able to? Because I know you remember that Mousasi fight, not the first one where he got upkicked. The second one, he submits Mousasi in that 3rd round. You know what I mean? So like, he used to be able to submit guys first, second, third, whatever the case may be. I know you saw him go 5 rounds in Strikeforce. A lot of us thought he might have beat Luke Rockhold that night, but it is what it is. So back in his day, the endurance wasn't an issue. It's just an issue now because, he just turned 41, so I don't know, man. This one's tough. It's like, if it doesn't hit the mat, I got Kevin Holland. If it does hit the mat, it depends when it hits the mat. It depends, how much time's left in that round, how tired they are, what kind of punches were exchanged beforehand. Like, there's a lot of stuff I need to know. So that's why I kind of agree with it being a pick-em. I'm gonna lean with Kevin Holland, just because the 13 years age advantage and 9-inch reach advantage. Everybody's on Jacare. The line went from -175 to -110 for Holland, so I'll go on the opposite side and take Holland. But it's not a Jamal Hill pick. I don't know. It could be 1 takedown and the fight's over shortly after for Jacare. He does have the skills to finish this fight at any point with his world-class jiu-jitsu. It's just, does he still have the fast twitch? Is he still, does he still have enough left in that old engine to get it going? I don't know. So I'll take the guy that's 13 years younger, that's on the up and up. I'll take Holland. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. It's with these fights, usually I'm more of an analysis guy over the odds guy. You never hear me swaying and going, well, the line is making me think this way. Well, the value's on I rarely hang on to those talking points, but this matchup, the Fiziev Moicano matchup, are perhaps those ways, which is why, even though my leans are one way, I'm starting to sway more your way, Dan, because maybe it's the contrarian in me. I don't like where the line's headed, and where the line's headed, if you're going to put a plus number now by Kevin Holland, well, I don't know. Now we're talking different. I believe these are 2 perfect examples of fights where the line kind of does dictate it. So regardless of what I say, regardless of what Dan says, you might want to look for where the plus number is on some of these matchups, folks.
Now, speaking of interesting line movement, Dan Tom, and make sure y'all follow us at line_movement. Go to linemovement.com. Give this video a like and a subscribe. But Dan Tom in the featherweight division, we got Cub Swanson taking on Daniel Pineda. They actually got Daniel Pineda, around the -160 to -170 range against the veteran Cub Swanson. Now, it's interesting for a lot of reasons, because if you would have given me Daniel Pineda on his first UFC run against Cub Swanson, and those were the odds, it would be double max bet season on Cub Swanson at that price. I mean, because back when Pineda left the UFC around 2014, you know, we're talking about a Cub Swanson that beat Dustin Poirier. We're talking about a Cub Swanson that knocked out Charles Oliveira. We're talking about a Cub Swanson that, you know, was in that main event with Jeremy Stevens right before the Frankie Edgar fight. Like, Cub Swanson was a top 5 guy in the world, was so close to getting a title shot. So if these were the odds, you know, half a decade ago, then goddamn, I'd be running to the window to bet Cub Swanson in this spot. But a lot has changed. You know, Daniel Pineda, look, I was actually kind of bummed he got cut the first time because he was always a really exciting guy, win, lose, or draw, right? Like, he was always known for like going out there, putting it all on the line, no matter what the case is. I mean, you look at his record and you want to talk about interesting numbers. Check this out, my man. This guy, Daniel Pineda, has had 42 pro fights. In his wins, 29 of them are finishes. So all 29 of his wins, he's gotten 100% finish rate. This guy has never won a decision in his life. He's knocked out 10 people and he's submitted 19 people. And in his losses, you know, he's been submitted 6 times, but let me preface that by saying the last time he got submitted was in 2010. So he ain't been submitted in over a decade. So he goes to the regional scene. He goes on this serious run. The only 2 L's, you know, one was a split decision to Emmanuel Matador Sanchez, who's, you know, top 5 pound for pound in Bellator right now. And the other one was to Georgie Karakani. And now I know the Georgie one looks bad on paper, but if you actually sit down and watch that fight, he beat the living shit out of Georgie to a point where, like, man, he got so carried away beating the guy's ass. He got caught with an up kick. It opened up a cut, and then they stopped the fight. And it was like, and he was like so disappointed because he was destroying Georgie. And then they call it a TKO win for Georgie. And then Georgie gets up on the fence and celebrates when like he was getting destroyed the whole fight, and just a little cut stops it. It was very unfortunate. So to me, Pineda won that fight. The only real loss he's had since he got cut from the UFC the first time was the Emmanuel Sanchez fight, and that was a very close back and forth fight. You can go to a split decision with Emmanuel Sanchez, that means you're legit. So I view Daniel Pineda in a different light than I viewed him in his first UFC run. I feel like he's put on a lot of size, man. He's a very physical guy now, and he's got some legit wins, man. I mean, he went out there in PFL. He submitted Jeremy Kennedy in the first round, which even Volkanovski took him to the second round. I mean, don't get me wrong. We're not discrediting Volkanovski's win. Volkanovski destroyed Jeremy Kennedy. But, like, when was the last time you saw someone do it in the first round? So that's one thing Pineda did. And then he had that fight against the dude that knocked out Damon Jackson with that flying knee. And, you know, he knocked him out in 29 seconds. So Daniel Pineda's been doing his thing. Then he comes into the UFC, he makes his return, and like we had all these questions because, you know, 2 of those fights got overturned. So I was thinking, hey, with USADA testing, he ain't gonna look the same. Not only does he look the same, he looks better, Dan Tom. He goes in there with Herbert Burns, and it's one thing to end a hype train. It's another thing to get your back taken by a jiu-jitsu black belt of the caliber of Herbert Burns, and then you survive those bad spots. You turn the position around, you get on top of him, you destroy him in his world on the mat. I'm pretty damn blown away by what Daniel Pineda's accomplished. It's just about, you know, is he ready to fight a guy like Cub Swanson, who's been, you know, top 15 his entire career?
Yeah, man, this is interesting. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. Great background on Pineda. So in brevity, I'll cut it short in saying that, yeah, I agree with the setup. And as far as the close to where these two talents kind of meet now, it is a flip. However, you know, and perhaps I'm showing my hand for this week's betting article, but perhaps you could argue that the line is surprising. I know you said interesting, but I think you could pick whatever word. I think we're both trying to say the same thing here, Dan, which is it's weird because, like, it's hard for me because I have to overcome my bias for Cub. I'm picking Pineda here, by the way, folks, in case you can't already tell. But I'm a big Cub Swanson fan, man. I love seeing this guy do well. You know, I'm an old school WEC guy. I was glad to see him get a win over, you know, and snap that painful losing streak. It was getting tough to watch, man. He got, you know, even if was submitted by another black belt, which would be the case here if he gets submitted by Pineda, by the way, folks. Pineda earned his black belt since those submission losses that Dan cited. But, you know, I'm like, dude, if Cub gets another submission loss, they're going to take away his Higan Machado black belt at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, poor guy. So I was glad to see him get that win. But though I wouldn't be surprised to see him fall into a guillotine here, especially because it's a small cage, you know. I'm not so worried about the submissions that you laid out and did a good job of laying out, Dan. More worried about the TKO part of, Pineda being do or die. He still can get rocked, but he just knows how to recover a lot better. He knows how to shoot for those singles, get into grappling to kind of save things. He's got that veteran savvy, even though he's got that crazy kind of do or die record, like Dan pointed out when you actually go look at his resume. But I like him a lot here, especially in the small cage, because I think it's going to be harder for Cub to stick and move in that smaller cage. And I think sticking and moving is Cub's best way to come through as an underdog. But the reason why I say it's interesting is because it opened as a pick'em, which I find super interesting, because where it sits now at Pineda at minus 165, like, to be honest, Dan, I figure that's where the line should have opened. And arguably, if it opened there, it would have been pushed to a 2-1, where now you got a bunch of people going, oh, how are they going to disrespect Cub? And then you start having the gambling line fight at about a 2-1, mountaintop where the battle's taking place. But instead, the odds makers thought this is a dead even fight. Let's see where the public takes it. And the public only took it, in my opinion. You don't have to agree, Dan. You don't have to agree, people watching. But in my opinion, the public took the line to where it should be. So it's really interesting. Now you get a nice price on Cub as a dog, if that's what you indeed like. Or if you are picking Pineda, well, it's like I said with with that minus 170 a number I referenced earlier, you're within that playable chalk range. Not saying it's your style, but it is playable chalk, whether you're on it or not.
Yeah, listen, man, I'm not convinced Cub Swanson's back at all. I mean, I know he was on the 4-fight skid and he snapped it with a fight of the night. So it's fun to say, oh, he got a fight of the night. Cub Swanson should not be having fight of the nights with guys with 5-0 records. Cub Swanson should be destroying guys with 5-0 records. If this guy's name was Crone Johnson, no one would give a shit. But since his name is Crone Gracie, all of a sudden, oh, he's Hickson's son, therefore he can do no wrong. And it's like, dude, the guy was 5-0 as a pro. You know how many fights Pineda's got? 42, Dan Tom. This is no longer a guy with 5 pro fights, and Cub barely gets past it. So it's one of these situations where, look, you're right. Daniel Pineda is do or die. He is kill or be killed. So if he can't get this submission, there's a chance that he could get lit up. I mean, Cub still has that good boxing. It's just, and also, it's not like Daniel Pineda is some young prospect. We got to make sure the fans know that we're not hyping Daniel Pineda as some 22-year-old young gun. Daniel Pineda is on his last run as well. It's just that seems like Daniel Pineda is finally starting to, come into his groove now, into his prime now, whereas Cub was in his prime a couple years back. That's the only reason why I favor Daniel Pineda in the spot. As far as betting goes, listen, I don't blame anyone for taking the shot on Cub at this price. I mean, don't get subbed, and there's a chance you might win. And I probably would pass on Pineda at current line, but if it goes down to minus 150 or better, that's a different story. But at current line, I'd say dog or pass, but I'm going to roll with Pineda, man. I'm going to say he gets his 20th submission win. I think he hands Cub his 8th submission loss, and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to go Pineda. So circling back to the main card, because one fight we forgot to talk about, I don't know how, the big boys in the heavyweight division. We got Junior Cigano dos Santos, the former heavyweight champion. He's taking on Ciryl Gane. And actually, I think it's Ciryl Gane. I think it's pronounced Gane. I used to say Gane, and then I'd say Gan. And then I heard John Anik saying Ghana. So I'm going to roll with Ghana. I assume John Anik knows. So it's Ghana. But anyways, that being said, man, Junior Cigano dos Santos, when you talk about his initial UFC run, I mean, I think that's the greatest heavyweight of all time. His UFC debut where he knocks out Fabricio Werdum all the way to his first title defense against Frank Mir. That run right there, I mean, he could do no wrong in my eyes in that run. I mean, knocked out Cain Velasquez, beat Crow Cop, beat Shane Carwin. I mean, Junior was the man back in the day. And I mean, even when he got dethroned by Cain Velasquez, I mean, he still beat Stipe Miocic. He still spinning wheel kicked Mark Hunt. So he's had some moments here and there, even beat Derek the Black Beast Lewis. But now it's getting to a point where it's getting a little bit uncomfortable to watch. He's had 6 or 7 knockout losses. And I mean, let's not even talk about the second and third Kane fights where we were like, dude, the guy's too tough for his own good. Now he's getting starched easy, because those fights, he wasn't getting starched easy. Those fights, he was taking 100+ significant strikes straight to the chin. He was so tough, he could stand up through it. Now it's like touch him one time and the fight's going to be over shortly after. And it's sad to see, but that's just what it is. And with Gane, or Ghana, I know I fucked up his name, with Ciryl Gane, man, it's not often that I pick guys with a 6-0 record, with a 7-0 record against someone like as established as JDS. Like we were just talking about with Cub Swanson when he fought that 5-0 guy, Crone Gracie. Or, you know, if it's like I said, if his name was Crone Johnson, no one would give a shit. But since it was Crone Gracie, you already know the deal, Dan Tom. But like, I don't view Ghana as like, you know, Crone Gracie. I don't view Ghana as just some random guy with less than 10 pro fights. I think this guy's a phenom, man. I think that he obviously has a serious striking background because you see his maturity in the cage, man. You see how relaxed he is. You see how he doesn't force things. You see how comfortable he is in there. I mean, firstly, he's an athletic presence. He's huge. You'll have like a 5-inch reach advantage over JDS. You don't have to see guys that much bigger than Junior. But the way he switches stances, the way he mixes in the straight punches, the kicks, the knees, the elbows, the flying knees as well. And then to top it all off, the guy's out here, you know, you talk about him being this guy with the kickboxing background. He's out here getting arm triangle chokes and heel hooks just to cap things off. Like, I'm blown away by this guy, man. I mean, if the line was -170 for Ciryl Gane, this would be my Jamal Hill of the week. But since it's -400, look, I think it's a solid parlay leg, no doubt about it. This is not a dog or pass situation. I am not picking JDS. I mean, I think we know what's happening here. It's time to take another knockout loss and give Ciryl Gane the biggest win of his career. So I got Ciryl Gane here, man. It's just about how does he get it done. But I'm going with a knockout. So let's go with France's own.
It's interesting. He hasn't knocked anybody out since the regional scene, and Ciryl Gane. I'm waiting for him to get knocked out so I can call him Ciryl Gane, which would be fun. No, I know nothing against the guy, just a stupid joke. But you know, you look at it and like he's getting a low. You know, he got it. You got to give him credit for it again. But we're looking at it. He's getting a low percentage heel hook submission that we haven't seen since Arlovsky hit one on Tim Sylvia. A little flashback there for you. I mean, you know, against a guy like Don'Tale Mayes, regardless how he finished him, you know, the fact that he's going, you know, 3 rounds with Don'Tale Mayes, and now a year later he's going to finish Junior Dos Santos. Now I'm picking Gane here. Don't get it twisted, folks. I don't want to set you guys up. I'm not trying to play with your emotions here, but I am asking kind of real questions. You know, Tanner Boser, who's, you know, he's a guy I like, man. You know, no shade there, but again, you know, and not recency bias because Boser just lost to Arlovsky. You know, speaking of other old names on, you know, downward trends, right? Just to go 3 rounds with him, did he win? Yes, of course. Yeah, he won. But I mean, you know, going 3 rounds with him there, you know, but how much has he improved with him? Because that was back in December, almost a year ago. I mean, the guy is 30. That's like a baby for heavyweight. So I'm expecting a better Gane here. But I feel like to be pinpoint is kind of dangerous, you know, on what we're going to see from him. Just as dangerous as it is for Dos Santos. I think I took a flyer on Dos Santos last time. You know, I picked him even though I wasn't confident on it, just because, you know, like maybe this is the one where he bounces back. You know, I still haven't seen as much, you know, like you said, with the 6-0 thing. I think Rosenstruck had more fights than Gane did, but I didn't see enough on him yet. And sure enough, I haven't watched the fight since I watched it live, but JDS comes out and you're like, oh, hey, look, it's vintage JDS. He's doing his thing. Here's that JDS decision that I warned people about could come. And then, boop, even JDS, with all as doctored up as he is, again, you know, I love JDS. I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying the guy looks in good shape, and they took pictures next to their doctors, right, Dan? When we do our social media studies, it's not like we're being jerks here. They're advertising it on their own social medias for goodness sakes. But he looks good coming into this again. But I'm not gonna fall into that honeypot. Now, if JDS wins, would it be the most surprised? No. Would I be happy for him? Yes. I'm gonna pick Gane here. I just feel like the number is too big, and there are other angles on this matchup that you can take. Again, not to tease something that may or may not. Again, check linemovement.com every week for my betting sheet. May or not be on my betting sheet, but there are other angles here that I believe are safer. Which is kind of a running theme, if you're guessing, from overs to unders that I've been liking on this card.
Real quick, I cannot hold that Don'Tale Mayes fight against Gane at all against him whatsoever, man. Like, if you watch that fight, first of all, it should have been stopped in the first round. I don't know what the hell the ref was waiting for. But second of all, I mean, that was a destruction. That was just And I mean, he'll slow cook you. And when talking about slow cooking, we'll talk about Billy Quarantillo here in a second. But like Ciryl Gane, he's not going to come out here and rush things. I mean, he was just playing with his food, man. So like, I cannot hold that against him. Like that, firstly, it should have been a first round stoppage, but it wasn't like there were any moments in that fight that were at all sketchy or anything. Like I just saw like an artist painting a picture and then he caps it off with a heel hook, you know? And so I was blown away personally by that performance. So just had to throw that out there. I've been blown away by all his UFC performances. Like I really do feel like this is a phenom. And for him to be so early in his career, either they lied to us about his record, you know, because I remember there was this one kid on Contender Series who trains with Israel Adesanya. I think his name's Carlos Erlberg or something. And they said he was like 2-0, but it turns out he was really like 6-0. They say Ghana is like 5-0, but he's probably really like 12-0. You know what I mean? So I think that you can't look into the record. You can't just see, oh, he went to the third round with Dante Almeida. Dude, he fucking killed Dante Almeida. And there was nothing close about that fight. And again, about JDS, like, I don't care how cool his mustache is. I don't care what his abs look like. That doesn't fix your chin, and it doesn't fix the point he's at in his career right now. So I'm sticking with Ghana by knockout, man.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it was sketchy. I'm saying I got to look back at it. Again, the dude hasn't fought in a year. I've probably watched 1,000 fights between then and now, so I got to go back and watch it. But the point is, he does play with his food. The point is, they're going to be showcasing each other against each other, and one guy is going to showcase better than the other. Who? I'm going to guess it's Gane. But I'm more confident in guessing that their little game that they both like to play will take it over.
Now, Dan Tom, moving down, we got two jiu-jitsu black belts because we got Mackenzie Dern taking on Virna Jandiroba. And man, what a hell of a fight. I love this fight. I mean, shout out to my girl Virna Jandiroba, cashing against Felice Herrig with ease. One takedown. The fight was over shortly after. I'm a big fan of hers. Obviously, Mackenzie Dern with the Brazilian accent. Listen, her jiu-jitsu is amazing. She's the daughter of Megaton Diaz, or as we like to say, Megatron Diaz. You know what I'm saying, Dan Tom? But two badass jiu-jitsu players going at it. So that usually leads me to ask the question, who's the better striker here? Because oftentimes, like when you see two high-level grapplers go at it, it's usually a striking match. So who do you think's got the edge on the feet? Because I would be shocked if either lady won by submission.
Yeah, I think it is going to come down to that. This is another one that I'm going to reserve my right to change. I don't have a hard pick. I think I was yeah, she fought. Yeah, this is, you're clearly already, I'm giving my hand away with how clear page error. Awesome. I've really done good research here. I'm a terrible podcaster. I have no hard feelings on this matchup. I am curious to see Dern, as a favorite and getting pushed even higher. I'm surprised she's not getting pushed higher just because of the name. I think people are going to be respecting Virna though, as they should. Yeah, man, what do you got on this fight?
So I'm going to go with Dern. I'll tell you why. So I feel like the grappling is going to cancel itself out. Like I don't see either lady being dominant. You know, maybe one takedown here and there, and then they'll have some nice scrambles. But like, I don't see anybody getting full mount. I don't see anybody getting back mount. Like I don't see side control. So most likely they're going to stand and trade. And Virna, while she might, technically have like, more by the book striking than Mackenzie Dern, I've seen Mackenzie actually go out there and drop chicks before, man. And like that power is something you don't often see in the women's divisions, which like I cannot wait to see Claressa Shields in women's MMA. Get her a couple of months of sprawl training, and she's going to be one punch knocking out these girls. And I'm all here for it, Dan Tom. I cannot wait for that. But back to this. Mackenzie's got that one hitter quitter, man, and they're probably going to stand and trade for 3 straight rounds or until someone gets knocked out. Most likely it goes to decision. I'm going to go with Mackenzie, man. I think she hits harder. I think she's been working with Jason Perillo. Her hands are probably getting a little cleaner as well. And I felt like that fight against Hebas was probably the fight she needed to kind of mature herself, because there's only been 2 fighters that got kicked out of the lab. Chris Gritzmacher and Mackenzie Dern. So I feel like Mackenzie's had to do a lot of soul searching. You know, she had the baby, she took the L to he boss, but she's bounced back, man. And she's working with the right people now. So I'm going to lean with Dern on this one to get it done. So we'll see what happens.
I'll take Dern too. That's kind of clicking as you're speaking about it. Apologies again, but a reminder, check my betting sheet at linemovement.com. Everything there is well researched, I promise.
Now, Dan Tom, last but not least, in the featherweight division, we got Billy BQ Quarantillo, and he's taking on Gavin Tucker. Canada versus USA. Man, this is such a hell of a fight. You know, Billy Quarantillo, he slow cooks these guys, man. He cooks these guys to the bone. And someone that can be slow cooked is Gavin Tucker. You watch that fight against Rick Glenn. I mean, there's your evidence right there. I know he had 2 softballs. No disrespect to your teammate Justin James or to Korea's Sungwoo Choi. But I mean, like, let's be 100% honest with it. Billy Quarantillo is way higher ranked than both those guys for a reason. And he's just better than both those guys. This is going to be the fight where those issues we had with Tucker after the Glenn fight reappear, man. Like in the Sungwoo Choi fight, you know, Tucker's so much better than that guy. I mean, Tucker, technically speaking, is pretty damn good, man. I mean, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's got a nice striking style, a lot of movement. He's in and out. He's hard to hit. It's just that he's the kind of guy that when you're talking about Billy Quarantillo, Billy doesn't stop. Billy keeps going forward the entire time. And if there's anything suspect about your cardio against a guy like Billy Quarantillo, if there's anything suspect about your chin, about your will to win, and you're fighting a guy like Billy Quarantillo, he will absolutely expose it in a way where, I mean, they might have to bring out the stretcher. You know what I mean? You saw that last fight against Kyle Nelson. Like going into that fight, we're talking about how, well, Kyle Nelson always has these good first rounds, and then he kind of slows down. He didn't have a good first round against Billy Quarantillo. Like Billy Quarantillo, or Tillo, it's not Tio, it's Tillo. Billy Quarantillo put his foot on the gas the second that bell rang. And I heard that, because, you know, he's got a reputation of like being a bit of a comeback kid, but I heard that after the Spike Carlisle fight, he's been really focusing on that strength and conditioning because he wants to be able to push his foot on the gas from the second the bell rings to the second the fight's over. So that's why he didn't really have to do a comeback in that Kyle Nelson fight. He was just able to kind of dominate the entire fight. And I think that kind of continues here, man. Look, I think he's going to have to find his range a little bit. You know, Tucker does move. Tucker does have some good shots. Tucker is experienced. Tucker's overcome adversity. But at some point, man, Billy's going to get to him. And when you start to slow down against a guy like Billy Quarantillo, he will tee off on you. And like I was talking about with that Sungwoo Choi fight, I mean, Gavin's so much better that Choi wasn't able to capitalize, but there were some moments where Tucker started to slow down. Tucker starts looking off into the audience, starts looking at his coaches. And a guy like Choi, you know, he didn't know where he was. He couldn't capitalize on it. A guy like James, I respect him. He dropped Gavin Tucker, and then he kind of redlined a little bit. You know what I mean? I think Quarantillo is going to have his head on straight. I think that he's going to have the proper composure. And not to mention, he's way bigger, too. He's got like a 4-inch reach and height advantage in this spot. The volume is about double or triple the output of Gavin Tucker. I got Billy Quarantillo here, man. I think he slow cooks Gavin Tucker. Eventually, I think he cooks him to the bone. I got to go Quarantillo here to get it done.
Yeah, man, same here. This you know, a fight I'm excited about with fighters that don't depress me or have the potential to depress me. Billy Quarantillo, or as I've been calling Billy Quarantine, is my kind of fighter because he is that kind of a slow burn guy who's technical. And if you're just a hype machine and you don't got much else besides some opportunistic stuff, you're gonna slowly get smashed, while guys like myself who appreciate the technical stuff sit there and cash. So I'm all about fighters like that. So I love Billy Quarantillo, man. He's been really good to us here at the Line Movement MMA family, cashing each time out. This is just a similar question with the Kyle Nelson fight. Maybe more of a question, less of a question with Kyle, who has a propensity to gas more than Tucker does. Do you look for a third round kind of an angle, picking him to finish inside the distance because it happens in the third if it does, or does he go to decision? I'm actually leaning more toward decision this time. to respect Tucker, but whether Tucker is trying to wrestle or forced to wrestle or has to keep up that striking pace, I don't think he's got enough knockout power to hurt Quarantillo. And I don't know if Quarantillo can knock him out, but I definitely think he can rock him. And if he can stay on him and then kind of, do a repeated prolonged beatdown, kind of like the Rick Glenn fight, so to speak. Minus the length, though, Quarantillo his movement's good. So, yeah, I like Quarantillo. Hopefully he has faith in his left hand. It's going to be a southpaw killer. And he's faced and beaten southpaws before, so give me Billy.
Yeah, and I just got to put emphasis on Billy Quarantillo not just being exclusively a comeback guy. In that fight with Nelson, man, I mean, like, you got to give credit to Billy's technique too, man. I mean, he was in there standing and banging from the second that bell rang. And like I said, you start to slow down on a guy like BQ, and boy, will he put it on you. And I'm worried for Gavin Tucker. I would personally, I'm not even going to worry about props. I would either take him straight or parlay him or whatever your preference is. I mean, don't get me wrong. You hit that prop correctly. Props to you. But I'm kind of just like confident in Billy winning. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm counting out Gavin Tucker once again. I did pick Tucker against James. However, embarrassingly enough, I picked Choi to beat Tucker. I was still hung up over the Glenn fight. But I think this is the spot where those problems reappear. So I'm going Billy Q, Team BQ.
Nicely done, sir. Nicely done.
Well, Dan Tom, it's going down this Saturday night, UFC 256, live from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. They can follow you at Dan Tom MMA. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Make sure you'll go to linemovement.com. Follow us on Twitter at line_movement. Give this video a like and a subscribe. Leave us a comment down below. Tell us what you're thinking. If you're on Apple Podcasts, make sure you all subscribe. Make sure you all give us a 5-star review. We truly appreciate it. Thank you so much to all our fans, supporters, and listeners. You guys are amazing. And also, got to give a quick shout out to everybody behind the scenes. Our producer, Jordan, to Joe, Brian, Nick, Dan, James, everybody. If I forgot anybody, just know that I'm very, very grateful. So thank you guys, everybody at Line Movement, the team. Y'all are badass. Man, one more event after this, Dan Tom. It's been 2020 has been quite the year, man. It's crazy that it's almost behind us. What does 2021 have in store? I cannot wait to find out. So again, follow Dan Tom at Dan Tom MMA. Follow me at Best Fight Picks. Follow Line Movement at line_movement. We truly want to thank you guys for all your support. We'll be back next week for the last card of the year. Thank you guys very much. Everybody enjoy the fight. Stay safe, and we'll speak soon. Hey guys, if you like what you see, make sure you click any of the videos below and subscribe to Line Movement today.